Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Good morning.
Welcome. Happy Friday.
Yeah.
Looking forward to the weekend. Today's the last day of the LHPH Capital Summit in San Diego.
Can't wait to hear how it went. Yeah.
I bet the weather was nice.
Oh my goodness. The weather's been great here too.
Yeah, it really has.
Yeah.
Can't
This morning
complain.
we were outside. We turned on a couple of patio heaters and we do coffee. It's like sacred.
Mhm.
We do coffee time every morning and had the patio heaters on. It was like, it's getting too warm and turned them off. It was like, oh my gosh, it's nice out.
Yeah, it's really
really
that
nice.
time of year where
Yep.
colors are, coming in on the trees and the air's cool and it's great.
And yard projects on the calendar for us this weekend. So.
I got a big bottle of ibuprofen and
I've already taken a couple of Tylenol because I hit it as soon as we're done. So
we it's a labor of love. We're having fun doing it.
Well, we like to be outside and we like to entertain family and friends, and so really looking forward to it. We're expanding our patio so that it's almost doubling the size, so I'm pretty excited about
a
it.
More usable space. That's right.
Yep.
All right. So other announcements, FIADA is tomorrow, Saturday. I believe it's the 5th. I think that's right. If you folks in Florida, verify and get down there.
Yep. The next thing coming up too is the dealer summit. No, the roundtable thing.
Is that November?
That's in November. Yeah.
Yeah. We also have Steve Levine's webinar. We need to get that date.
Oh yeah,
I think he said second Tuesday. But
we
we'll
were going to talk about bankruptcy. So those of you who paid attention to some of the stuff that was going through some of the private Facebook groups around bankruptcy, and then we talked about it on the morning show a couple weeks ago.
Right.
So
it might be third Tuesday. Anyway, find out and get yourself there for that one. Steve's, uploading lots of great information. We're going to upload some great information today too.
You were talking to, because Jim, those of you who listen a lot know that Jim he's a spreadsheet nerd and he loves a spreadsheet and he loves to be able to calculate different things and to give insight into performance and all sorts of things to the dealers that he works with, and that we work with, and this is either through our personal the consulting, the coaching side, or V8.
Right.
And it's been really, really fun to with V8 now that there's some data being collected that we can just kind of chop and analyze and figure out what our drivers or what are trends or and compare. We all know buy here, pay here. For as many buy here, pay here dealers as there are in the industry, there are business models.
Yeah, I mean, it's people do business differently. I think what we tried to do here today was this is what I'm always trying to do. I'm always trying to find ways to present the numbers the way that I would have wanted to see it when I was a dealer, so that I could be more informed and make
educated
a better
decision.
So that's what I'm always trying to do. I'm always looking at numbers and trying to figure out how can I present the information in a way that will be meaningful. And last night we were in the middle of a conversation and had a light bulb and
and then he disappeared. He's like, we were doing an evening on the patio because we spend a lot of time out there, and he's thinking about something. He goes, I'm gonna disappear for a little while, and went into his office and was there for about a half an hour and put together this, maybe a little bit longer, but and put together this table.
So what our folks are going to see is a simple little spreadsheet with calculations that are from actual dealers that are V8 members. So I picked 5 just because they were all in the same group and their numbers were readily available.
Well, should we talk before we bring it up? Let's talk about what it was that we were discussing.
You'll have to refresh my memory.
And why this, because we were kind of talking about some of our clients and the data coming from V8 and about like cost of car and the amount down needed, because one of the clients that we're working with, they're really wanting to boost sales, and they're just not seeing it happen. And we were just like, oh, if you did this, you could potentially have a trajectory that's much larger than what it is you're experiencing right now. So
yeah, and so we started with that particular client. We started with analyzing aged inventory and just saying, okay, so we talked about this in the prior podcast, where by analyzing that inventory and taking the typical deal structure, we said, you don't have very many of your applicants that could afford these cars that are, in this aged bucket.
Yeah. And so, that kind of first off comes to question, why are you choosing this type of vehicle?
Yeah.
And so sometimes it's, there's lots of different reasons. And one of the things, they talk about, well, if it's a newer car, it's not going to break down as much. We won't have as much repairs. We won't have as many repos, or they look prettier. It's my lot is something that I have more pride in, because I've got pretty cars out front, and the both of them valid for your reasons too.
Yeah, but we got to be careful, because I think everything you just said, if I'm hearing that from a dealer, I'm thinking, can you prove the things that you just said? Like, does the math bear that out? Because, it's like, that's what I'm kind of focused on here today is the numbers are the numbers. The portfolio performance is the portfolio performance, and the cash deal is the cash deal. Like, we can't hide from these numbers. It's just simple
Everyone
math.
has to go through them.
Yeah.
Every business model has to go through these things. It's like, let's chart it out. What does it look like?
Everybody can have a different strategy.
True.
It's just that I think sometimes if we're married to a strategy that we have, and look, we're not advocating for a bad breakup over here with a business model or business pricing. It's like we never advocate for anything too disruptive. I think in this context, it's more a question of, could dealers, should we re-examine our own business model? Of course we should. That's what happens
Always.
in V8 a lot of times. People are looking at how somebody does business and why, and what's the benefit of each and so on. And then I think beyond that, it's like we sometimes we fall into a trap of, this is our business model because so-and-so told us years ago this was the right business model. And so they've just kind of stuck in that lane, and that's where they're comfortable. That's what they know, the value of cars and where to buy and this and that. So there's all kinds of reasons people choose and stay in a lane with their business model. I think what I was hoping to advocate for here today is the idea that maybe a second tier of financing makes sense in some situations. I think the math today kind of supports that idea.
Good morning, Karen.
Hi, Karen Barnett. So it's just a matter of figuring out what are the drivers and what's the hard math.
Well, and what I really appreciate about what you do, because you all know, all of the listeners out there, it's like I'm Jim's favorite. I'm his biggest fan. But is that by putting different business models, like we said, as just about as many dealers out there are business models. This is actually one of the closest ways to compare apples to apples, not apples to tangerines.
Correct.
So this is apples to apples on key things that every dealer has to do in their business model.
Sure.
So, but they get to choose where those key numbers lie.
Yeah. And obviously everybody's trying to satisfy a certain market. In some case, they're trying to satisfy an underwriting scoring, approach, or whatever the case may be. I think those who have listened to more than 5 minutes of the podcast know that I'm a cash flow first kind of person.
Yeah.
Like I want to see the money in the bank.
You can coach through, and you have coached through equity models.
Yeah.
But it
can be done. I just always take a point, even with those folks who have equity in mind. I always take a moment to illustrate to them on the front end, make sure we understand the difference between this and this. And now, if you still want to proceed with this, then and that's that whole business model comparison tool that I built years ago. People still ask for that because they find the thing on YouTube, and so it's just meant to do that. It's meant to say, here's how much cash you would invest, or if you invest this much cash, this would be the yield on that cash. This would be the phantom profit yield. This would be the receivables yield, but the actual cash yield is really what we're focusing on here today is the cash. So I've got this in both a PDF and on spreadsheet form. Why don't we try it in the spreadsheet form here first and see if it's going to view well? I got
spreadsheet. Okay. Very good.
right there. So I think I can manage the size of the thing.
So again, those of you who are in listener land on any of our syndicated podcast stations, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Apple,
all
whatever, go to YouTube if you want to see the charts. Yes.
So again, what I've done is I've taken actually 5 dealers, and I did that because all 5 dealers had enough history and had they're in the same groups or similar size of portfolios, et cetera. And I just started to break down. What I wanted to do here is one of the first things I need to clarify is I'm not using amortization on this dealer's amount financed at a certain payment and a certain term to arrive at how much P&I we're going to collect. Instead, I'm using the actual historical portfolio performance. So regardless of what that amortization table might say you're supposed to collect, this is based more on what the dealers are actually collecting based on at least 3 months of portfolio history.
Yeah. And I'm seeing that you added the thing we talked about this morning at coffee time, because I think it's pretty dang powerful to see too. So, you know, when Jim and I started looking at this, it was just the upper part, dealer 1 through 5. You know, what I was looking at was original amount financed. I wasn't paying as much attention to the opening principal stuff, but the amount financed, original cash in deal, what's collected in 24 months. And what's collected via the cash in deal. And the other ones I wasn't paying as much attention to, but I was just looking at cash.
Yeah.
You know, what is it that where do we stand in regards to cash? And you go ahead and I'll add in my
so
things.
When I showed this to Michelle this morning, I just, you know, obviously she's very bright, and I wanted to have her perspective and see if I was presenting the right information that would be useful. And as she reviewed it, she zeroed in on something that I think is quite interesting. And so this is why, let me kind of explain the elements first, and then we can go into the details.
And those of you who are just listening, we're comparing numbers for 5 different dealers with 5 different business models.
They're similar. I mean, they're
well, where they change or where they differ is it primarily at the very beginning is the cost of car that they're buying.
Yeah, but if you look at, regardless of their cost, if you look at the note amount, you know, 4 of the 5 dealers are between about 11,000 and 13,500 roughly is their note amount. So those are pretty similar business models right there.
Yeah.
Then the one dealer is, you know, significantly different at about 18,500 on their note amount. And they condition their cars more. So you can see that in the next column, which is cash and deal. So the original cash and deal. And listen, I know when you're looking at cash flow earnings, you would often want to include down payment. You can do that or not do it. I didn't do it here because the down payment, we're not taking any risk with the down payment. That's granted, it's cash and it goes in the bank account, but I'm looking at what we're putting at risk and what we yield against that risk. Okay. So this is why I'm looking, just measuring, you know, once the down payment is in the bank and we've got a note out there on the street, then how does that look?
You know, one of the other things that I'm noticing here too is the markup.
Yeah.
From original amount financed and original cash and deal. And because the original cash and deal, that's what you bought the car for and what you reconditioned the car for. And then you jump back to the original amount financed. And it's like, there's some that I see it's double.
Yeah. You got to be careful about that though, because the amount finance is not necessarily representative of the markup. That's the note, not the selling price. So in other words, it could be,
well, with a big down payment or whatever.
The down payment is. That's the part we don't know here. It's like we're just looking at the note that is created. Okay. So now the next column we did was so again, those amount finance, for those not seeing the screen, run from about 10.6 note up to about 18.5. Then on the cash and deal, that dealer that's 18.5, dealer 1 on the 18.5 on the amount finance is about 12.1 on cash and deal, where the rest of the group is 7,300. No, there's one there for 8,200.
There's about 4,000 difference to the next closest is about $4,000.
Yeah, so it's a pretty significant amount of risk more that the dealer's taking. And so when you look at the cash and deal, you can see that those numbers run. There's one there at 82. The others are more like 55 to 73.
Yeah, I'm looking at 3 and 5, and their cash and deal is about the same. Yeah, it's a little over $5,000.
Yep, and you can see that their note is a couple thousand difference. But now let's look at how much is collected in 24 months.
So again, now the deal's done, underwriting's done, deal is done. Right. So up to original, cash and deal, original amount finance, there's like a line that just kind of comes through. Deal is done. Now let's see how these models perform.
Yep. Okay. Yep. And so when I say how they perform, this is something every time I use the word perform, Brent Carmichael always perks up, like, perform based on what? It's like, thank you. You're right. It's like, but in this case, I'm just looking at cash. I'm looking at cash yield. So that next column is how much would we collect? Again, using that first column over there, I didn't explain. That's a 3-month rolling average, and that's a principal and interest collected as a percentage of the opening note. I feel like I've explained that a dozen times on the morning show, but basically what we're doing is we're measuring how much money did we collect in a given month as a comparison to how much total principal was in the portfolio at the start of the month.
You always just kind of like, I think my eyes glaze over.
Yeah. So like, okay. I call them conversion rates, but it's basically, it's really just measuring, if a dealer's got $1 million portfolio and in the case of, in the course of a month, they brought in $50,000 of principal and interest, and that would be this number here.
That would be the net. Would that be the net collected, or that would be the which?
No, that's just that's the P&I collected. It's sometimes called a liquidation rate, or I call them conversion rates, just because it's the rate at which your portfolio is converting to cash. Okay, so this is why we can't hide behind those numbers. This is
that's that first number, the 47464755.
Correct.
Okay, gotcha.
That's the actual portfolio yield, principal and interest.
Okay.
So you can see, and we didn't explain those numbers, but most of the dealers are in the 4s. There's one dealer, number 4 is at 5.5, but most of them are in that 4.0 to 4.7% range.
So they all kind of collect about at the same rate.
They do. Yeah.
So all right.
So again, I'm throwing out the amortization table. It doesn't matter what the customer is supposed to pay. This is just saying traditionally, historically, in recent months, this is the way your portfolio has performed. So now if I apply that same portfolio performance, the typical yield from the portfolio to a single contract, then the cash collected in column F there would be those numbers. And you can see dealer 1 collects the most at 15.2. And then the numbers are more like, let's see, there's one down there at 8,600 to about 12,000 for the other one. But, you'd want to see the screen here to kind of see how they compare. But now we go to the next one and say, okay, let's look at what we collected in 24 months versus our original cash and deal.
Okay.
Because now we're getting down to real cash. Like, the customer took delivery. I deposited the down payment.
They've been making their payments for 24 months.
I have this amount of risk. And based on historical rate at which the dealer has collected, that is how much cash would go into the bank accounts across 24 months. Okay. So now if you compare that, you can see the numbers now start to, you've got one dealer there at $4,000. Dealer number 3 has collected $4,000 more than their cash and deal. Okay. So dealer number 1 with that higher cash and deal
has collected
$3,000. And the others are also around $3,000, 3,800. Is the positive cash across 24 months.
So does that also indicate like the payment is about the same?
Not necessarily.
No,
not necessarily, because again, this is not using a payment. This is using portfolio performance. Okay. So it's the rate at which we collect on our portfolio. If you think about how much is outstanding at the beginning of the month, and we typically collect about 4.5%. Like for dealer number 1, we typically collect about 4.5% of what's on the books, right, on a given month.
Oh my goodness, our we've a lot of comments have been exploding, and I had my screen enlarged, so I wasn't able to. So while you're talking, I'm going to read a little bit.
Yeah, let me kind of finish through the numbers so I can help our viewers that are in the numbers kind of stay with me on what's there. But So collected versus cash and deal. Now the next column we did was let's look at net collected then. That column G, which is, what we collected in excess of cash and deal. And now let's look at that as a percentage of our cash and deal. So dealer one with the high amount finance, high cash and deal, they've netted in cash about 25% of what their original risk is. Dealer number 2 is at 40%, dealer 3, 74.9, dealer 4, 45.6, and dealer 5 is at 55.2. So this is where you start to look at, okay, so we know there's still a note over there. And this last column I've got is the remaining note outstanding. So we know there's more note to collect, but without rehashing a bunch of old stuff, I have asked dealers, and I think we're going to continue through the morning show to really focus on 24 months. Okay. I asked dealers to really look at that because that way we're all kind of speaking apples to apples and same time frame and think about what's the yield. We had experts come on our B8 Plus meetings last month that said, or maybe it was a month before, but basically said, very few dealers, in our experience, very few customers are paying past 24 months.
And they're either trading in or
repossessing or whatever. So the point is, and I can give other reasons for why we like 24 months here, but basically for today, I'm just saying, if you look at that 24 months, then across 24 months, the dealers have enjoyed that much cash back in their pocket against their risk. So, we can get kind of hung up on the note about, but my portfolio is 10 million and yours is 7 million or whatever. We get kind of hung up on those kind of numbers. But what I'm saying is just cash yield. This is why we want to look at portfolio performance. This is why we want to look at collection rates and see, what are we squeezing out of the portfolio? And how much risk are we taking to create that cash? And so this is why, I think when you saw it, the reason dealer 1 and dealer 5 are both in bold here is we kind of wanted to feature those two because you pointed out.
Okay. Well, and before we move down to that other part, I want to go through some of these comments.
Okay, sure.
First, Mark Anderson. Hi, Mark. All plans show focus on maximum return on investment. It's a learning curve per each dealer or demographic, but cash flow is always the leading, I think, dictator, regardless of line of credit or self-funded. Unless you are operating like a traditional bank, we all swim in the subprime and deep subprime market. And then Rudy, and is it Enriquez? Okay. Yeah. Rudy, both of them out of Texas, aren't they?
No, Mark's out of Illinois.
Mike, I'm sorry. Sorry, Mark. Rudy is like, how long are these loan terms? Dealer 5 should collect a higher percent of CID than dealer 1, whom I assume is on a 48 to 60 month term. And then he pipes in again. He says, oh, I see now. Very fascinating and useful data. And then Tyler Simmons, hi, Tyler, piped in from Texas. That net collected percentage is a great number to look at. Really like that approach because when comparing to others like you have here, it can be a tale of underwriting and collection departments. Yeah.
And obviously underwriting would drive that first column over there as much as anything, the rate at which we collect. Tyler's right. And so is Rudy in that term is a factor. But what I'm really suggesting is, let's say dealer 1 has a 4-year term and the rest of the dealers have a 3-year term. I'm simply saying
we're just at 24 months. This is where we're at. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. I'm simply saying, regardless of what those terms look like, the term of loan, I'm simply saying in 24 months time, this is how much we collected against our risk.
And the capital experts. I mean, I think that you were talking about when we did a V8 Plus, which is the V8 members, and we do some supplemental meetings. And this was on this kind of topic where we had Brent Carmichael was one of the ones, Jimmy Rambo was another one, and so was Steve Burke. And we were talking about how they look at these things as they flow. And so go ahead.
Yeah. So I think,
and well, they were the ones that were like 24 months. That's where 24 months is most people don't last beyond that.
Well, yeah, that the customer doesn't mean it's been a bad outcome. The customer could have traded into another car, or they might have had a wreck and we put them in something else or whatever. It doesn't mean it had necessarily a terrible outcome. So, but this number, and I want to kind of clarify one thing on the thing that Tyler said, the net collected, we do look often at net collected. I think what Tyler may be thinking of is the net collection efficiency, and that's a little different number than what we're doing here. This is based on a month over month portfolio performance, like the yield. So it's more like a gross collections. It's all principal and interest collected versus the opening principal balance for that month.
So, all right. So let's move on to that bottom part there. And so when we were looking at just the top part, I observed that dealer 5 and dealer 1, dealer 5, it's about, if you double what his original cash in deal is, it'll equate to dealer 1.
Yeah, but before you go to there, let's point out that the reason that you clued in on dealer 1 and dealer 5 is because they both had virtually the same amount of cash collected versus cash in deal.
Yes.
They both had right at $3,000.
Right at 3,000. Yeah, exactly. And so I said, oh, well, that spoke to me quite a bit. And I said, well, what if dealer 5 did 2 cars for the same amount of money that dealer 1 is doing for 1 car?
Now you're thinking like Jim. No, this is part of why I created that business model tool. It's just going to yield more cash.
Because this just is really super interesting to me. So we took dealer 5 and we said, okay, what would if we doubled everything? And so you did 2 cars instead of 1 and the same amount of money in. So it's basically, we don't know for sure how much we aren't showing how much the down payment was, but cash out for a dealer. So if we're going to take dealer 5 and dealer 1, and they've got the same amount of risk, they've got this much money and they have 2 cars instead of 1 car, what is the amount that's collected? And
well, you just effectively double it. Now you're at $6,000 of cash that you've collected against your risk, against that amount of money that you invested. So, said another way would be, if that dealer 5 were to take the same amount of money at risk. So let me just, for those not seeing the screen, dealer 1's cash and deal is 12,100. Dealer 5's cash and deal is 5,600. So obviously dealer 5 could, within that cash and deal, could afford to finance 2 cars inside that same structure and create 2 contracts, which means 2 car payments, which means, the cash yield across 24 months becomes now $6,000 against that. The yield on the risk is the same because we doubled both, right? And then the dealer at the end of that period, we haven't talked about the notes remaining yet, but that dealer now at the end of the period actually still has more notes. Not that, I always just say, and this is just me being a smart aleck, is like, the reason we have to focus on cash flow is because when it's time for me to meet payroll with one of my technicians, it's not like I can go back there and say, hey, Joe, I'm a little short on cash this month. Can I pay you with Wally Smith's contract? I'll give you a 30% discount on it, and you can take that instead of cash. How's that? I got some notes. It's just me being a smart aleck, right?
Well, and you do that so well, honey.
But it's like, the receivables are, the receivables are what drives the interest and what drives the payments, right? Yes, we need the portfolio.
So okay, I'm going to poke some holes.
Please.
And this is reminiscent too of some conversations that have been had. So obviously, a vehicle that you're buying for half of what you would buy a dealer 1, dealer 5 are not going to be as pretty.
Okay, sure.
So they're going to be older. They're not going to be as pretty.
I'm going to stop you right there. Dealer 1 is collecting at 4.7%. Dealer 5 is collecting at 4.5%.
Okay. So, it's exactly. So no, but what I'm saying is that your lot, if you shifted business models and did something, your lot's going to look different. Okay. So the next thing is your bank account. Yes. Yeah. So repairs. A lot of times people is like, I have a higher price car because I'm going to have to repair it less.
Okay.
So where does that factor in?
Show me that really works better. For this particular dealer, it's not working better.
So where is that? Is that Yeah, where are repairs in here?
Well,
Are they?
it's not. I mean, it's in cash and deal because your cash and deal is really the cost of the vehicle with reconditioning minus down payment. So we're working on cash and deal
Okay.
here. So the fact that dealer's got a heavy cash and deal doesn't matter if it's $5 recon or $5,000 recon. That's their risk in the contract at the time of delivery.
Okay. And then the next question is would repo, I mean, if you're throwing in their repo rate,
It's in there.
it's in there. So it's built in how?
It's built in because what I'm doing is obviously we're assuming that none of them charge off. So what we're doing is we're driving the portfolio performance and saying, if we continue to yield, if we continue to collect payments
Okay.
at the rate that we have, and the customer does not charge off,
Mhm.
but I can tell you that dealer one who's at 4.7%, that is factoring in charge offs. That is factoring in because what is it saying? It's saying the dealer only collected this much principal and interest in the month as a percentage of the start of the month.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't it be 6%? Well,
So-
because they had charge offs and repos and
Yeah.
some customers didn't pay and what have you. So,
Yeah.
so that's why I wanted to go to the real
Uh-huh.
collection rate and not some amortization table.
So Rudy piped in again, and I put it up on the screen. It says the cash flow may double, but how does that drive our overhead and labor costs, commissions, and also the pressure of dropping underwriting criteria in order to double your volume?
Give me a break, Rudy. I just thought of this at 8:00 last night. So, no, it's like I look forward to being able to map that into the curves because we'll ultimately be able to create this for our V8 group so they can see the curves. And I want to be able to do collection costs, but we don't currently have expenses in V8. Right. So we're starting to work toward collecting them in a certain structure, but that's true. You do have additional costs associated with running that. But I think, what this really illustrates though, is that if we can create double the cash against, your costs aren't going to double. At some point, yes, if I had a 500 account portfolio and I acquired another 500 account portfolio, my expenses might double overnight. But generally speaking, dealers aren't going to see, it's a small ratio, right? But we do want to be able to illustrate that. And I look forward to doing that because I think the cost associated with all of those things, we'd like to be able to include in the risk element because the dealer does have operating costs associated with that. You've certainly got collection and servicing costs, associated with, collecting those
Mark,
car payments.
another comment, which I really appreciate. You guys break this down so good and what I've been preaching and what we've been doing. Again, ROI. So many people make this personal. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah.
And want to be like high-end retailers or franchise. We don't want to offer junk, but be selective on purchases. Zone in on your buy list. And so I there's a piece of that there is what do I want my lot to look like too?
Yeah.
That's huge. And we talk frequently about and I'm just going to say ego.
Yeah.
That it's just like, well, I love driving by my lot because I see these beautiful shiny cars. And so it's shifting your mindset and you're driving by this lot that's full of cars that you see, oh my goodness, this is going to just really bring in a lot of cash flow.
Yeah. And listen, I'm not sitting over here advocating that we start putting junk on our lots. That's not what I'm saying.
No.
But I am saying we need to really relook at our business model and ask ourselves if we could adopt another model. One of the things you mentioned, that client, I'm going to be suggesting that they look at adding another tier of financing.
Yes.
And measure it. Just measure it. See how it does.
Test it out. Because
you're going to have less risk.
Yeah.
If they don't sell, they don't sell. You don't have any risk. But if they sell, then we got to measure the risk.
The reason behind it is we've been working with this client about like, how do I want to grow? And I'm not seeing the growth that I'd wanted.
Right.
And so they were looking through all of the leads that were coming in. And it's like, if you changed your business model like X, you would be opening up your portfolio.
Well, let's be
quite
careful
a bit.
about the terminology there. Like, I don't know that they have to change their business model as much as they have to change their approval process. Like, it's an underwriting question. They could choose to put this customer in the same car that they have and take on that risk, relative to down payment or customer's income and payment amount, whatever. They could keep carrying the same cars and adjust. Because if I'm a customer in a poor credit situation and I've got 1,500 down, and you offer me the choice between a nice car or an older car with some miles, I'm probably going to choose the nice car, right? So, so of course, given the choice, that's what I'm likely to choose. I'm simply saying, let's put aside these ideas that we do it because if you can't back up in your numbers what your theory is, then let's just go back to the hard math and just say, what does it produce relative to the risk? Pure and simple. Like, so there's still some receivables out there, but it's like, what does the portfolio produce relative to the risk that we're taking? Isn't that the business that we're in?
It absolutely is. And it's just, Jim's so level and just always looks at these things in the same way. And, we're always preaching, you can't, that until you can measure and back it up, then it is just a theory. It's, and we've had conversations with a lot of really well-known dealers where it's like, I had this theory and then I started running the numbers and realized my theory was wrong, which changes how I do certain things in my business. And so, and it's an interesting thing because what we've watched, when you can start to back it up with numbers and those theories get challenged, because now you have numbers, it's like, do you choose to stay with your theory or do you choose to shift your theory so that...
And I'm going to let dealers decide. At the end of the day, it's their name on the building. It's their business and how they want to do business. And if it makes them feel good to have shiny cars and that's what they want to do, that's their prerogative, right? I just want to make sure that we put information in front of dealers, especially these early stage dealers. And there's a lot of our listeners on the podcast. These early stage folks, we want to make sure that they're familiar with the impact of their decisions. So this is kind of why we're laying out the numbers, and it's like we can... you've heard me say in recent weeks, like, I just want us to move past opinions. And that's kind of true about politics too, right?
Too.
I mean, it's political season, but it's like, can we move past opinions and quit getting so energized and fired up about opinions and just prove what we're theorizing?
What is math? Because that's one thing about, you look at, overall, everything in our experience boils down to math. And math is universal and math does not lie.
Right.
But as long as you've got the right numbers and you're driving the right drivers, it does not lie.
Yeah.
And so
I think what Mark talked about is
numbers
ROI.
never lie.
And Mark talked about ROI, and I would take it a step further, because a lot of times when you're talking ROI, you're talking profit, return on investment, and I'm just talking cash on cash return, which I think I said in the description of the podcast today. Is like, we're going to focus on cash return. What could I put in the bank? And so Rudy's right to say, well, we take the next step and look at after my operating expenses, what did I really put in the bank? But it's irrespective of that, Rudy. This is just saying the cash yield on the contract, the gross cash yield on the contract looks like this for these 5 dealers.
So I posted numbers never lie from Mark. Rudy, hard agree. Return on investment is so much more important than the nominal unit of measure. And then he also piped in and he's like, math also doesn't care.
Yeah.
You're right or you're broke.
Yeah.
Right. Math has zero skin in the game.
Yeah.
And it has zero ego, and it has zero, it has no emotion. It's money has no emotion. And so math has no emotion. It's a tool.
Yeah. No, it is.
I
feel like we covered it.
I really enjoyed this conversation. I think that this is a really great example of, what your driving motivators and factors are. It's like, let's really get down to what is going to help dealers. And so I'm going to do a plug. V8 is really such a great opportunity for dealers to be able to look at numbers this way. And also to compare with other people and have the conversations in a confidential room about what is it that you are doing and why are you doing it this way, and what have been the things that you have, what have been your hard parts, and what have been, so the conversation is very, very rich.
Yeah.
And so if you haven't looked into joining a V8 group, super, super inexpensive. It's, right now for the balance of 2024, it's $129 to get into your home
group.
base group. And then starting in January, we're going to be adding like a prime level, which is V8 plus, which will have, that's where we bring in the experts. That's where we have like the really in-depth conversations based on what questions are being asked in our V8 groups. We'll bring together the experts and have a very in-depth conversation, not about the stuff that your composites that you're bringing in, but about the things that matter.
People really should hurry and get in because they're getting that stuff for free in 2024.
They're getting it for free in 2024. So there are rooms in groups. There is room in groups, all different sizes. We have beginners. We have ones that up to 100 accounts or 100. Beginners up to 100, 500 to, or 100 to 500, and then 500 plus. And there's always room. We just are bringing on a moderator to start that is just absolutely phenomenal.
Yeah, it's great.
And looking forward to just expanding that program, because it's really is proving to be very beneficial to the dealers that are in there.
Yeah.
So and you can come to your meeting while you're at a baseball game with your kid, because that happens. Alrighty, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. We really, really do appreciate you tuning in and being a part of the conversation, chiming in. We're here now every Wednesday, Friday. We'll be back on Wednesday with a white hat topic, which is about where we're applying squiggly lines to the business. And so intangibles, things that are about how do you want to be known, liked, trust, or it is known, liked, and trusted in your community. So again, thank you so much for joining us. If you got any questions, you reach out. We would love to answer them. All right. Have a great day, everybody. Again, we'll see you on Wednesday.